Welcome to today's custom-tailored deep dive. I mean, we know you are out there right now just navigating a busy day.
Yeah, probably balancing a dozen different things at once.
Exactly, a dozen responsibilities, and you are just looking for a moment of reflection, a bit of a shortcut, really, to cut through all that noise
Hmm.
and gain a deeper understanding of some truly profound spiritual philosophy. So if you are seeking a bit of a mental and spiritual reset, you are in exactly the right place.
That is the mission today. We are exploring a framework that was written centuries ago, but the imagery and the psychological insights Cherry presents, well, they feel incredibly urgent for the human condition right now.
I really do.
We are looking at a translated hymn by Guru Nanak Dev Ji.
Oh.
Specifically, this is from Rag Sorat'h and is found on page 636 of our source material.
Right, and just to set the stage for you, our listener, our goal here is to act as your guides through the profound metaphors within this specific text. We are going to explore the idea of the world being described as a sea of fear.
A very vivid image.
Oh, absolutely. And we will look at the concept of the divine word acting as a literal boat to cross it. And we'll examine the starkly contrasting paths of how we actually navigate our existence. But before we even get into the sea of fear, I want to clarify something right at the top.
Sure.
The source is from Rag Sorat'h. And just so we're all on the same page here, a rag is essentially a musical framework, right? Or a mood in Indian classical music.
Yeah, that's right.
So how does knowing that change how we should approach this material today?
I mean, it changes everything, honestly. A rag isn't just a melody. It's a specific emotional atmosphere designed to evoke a very certain state of mind in the listener.
Right.
And Rag Sorat'h traditionally is often associated with a feeling of seeking, like a deep longing or a sense of motivation to overcome a massive obstacle.
Okay, so it's active.
Very active. So when we read these words, we shouldn't just read them as a dry philosophical essay. They were meant to be sung.
Wow.
Yeah, they were meant to evoke the visceral feeling of being small in a vast, overwhelming universe, and that deep, deep yearning to find a way across.
That musicality really makes the opening imagery even more striking. Okay, let's unpack this concept. Let's start with the central metaphor of the entire hymn.
Let's do it.
There is a section marked as the raho, which essentially functions as the pause, or I guess the central chorus of the piece. And it describes the world as a sea of fear. It paints this picture of drowning without a boat, just completely unable to reach a distant shore.
It's a brilliant framing of the human experience. The sea of fear represents the overwhelming nature of worldly existence. I mean, think about the constant anxieties, the material attachments.
The daily grind.
Exactly, the endless churning of daily survival. Attempting to swim across this on your own, relying purely on your physical or mental endurance,
Yeah.
is presented as an impossible task.
You just can't do it.
No, you will simply exhaust yourself and sink.
Okay, let's unpack this sinking versus floating dynamic because the physics of the spiritual ocean are really fascinating to me. There's this vivid image of people living without any awe or reverence, what the text calls the fear of God, and as a result, they just get heavy.
Yeah, heavy with the burden of their actions.
Right, their actions, their mistakes or sins, their ego, they literally act as lead weights tied to their ankles, pulling them down.
Yes, the spiritual gravity is completely tied to the ego. The imagery contrasts this heavy sinking state with what is called the glance of grace from the Lord.
The glance of grace.
Right. When an individual is loaded down by the weight of their own transgressions, they are bogged down. They drown.
Yeah.
But when that glance of grace is cast upon them, it fundamentally alters their spiritual density.
It makes them light.
Exactly. The grace is what carries a person across. It's what makes them buoyant.
But buoyancy alone doesn't get you across an ocean, right? You still need a vessel. The text explicitly mentions needing a boat to cross this sea of fear.
Yes.
So what is the actual mechanics of that boat, according to the text?
Well, the vessel is explicitly identified as the Shabbat, or the divine word. It's the active practice of continually praising the Lord.
Continually.
Right? It's not just a passive belief. The act of continuous praise is the sturdy hull that keeps the turbulent waters of the world from pulling you under.
And what I found so compelling is that it's not a solo journey. The text says that for those who serve the true guru and get into this boat, their companions are saved as well.
What's fascinating here is the ripple effect of this spiritual orientation. The buoyancy we talked about isn't isolated.
It spreads.
It does. When someone truly secures their place in that boat, their lack of worldly gravity lifts up the people around them. Their spiritual success is inherently communal.
That is so beautiful. And it even mentions that for these people, no one blocks their way. And they have the ambrosial nectar on their tongue. I imagine that ambrosial nectar is a metaphor for a kind of ultimate spiritual fulfillment.
Absolutely. It represents a profound inner sweetness. Think about the stark contrast here. You are in the middle of a terrifying, turbulent sea, which should be a struggle for sheer survival.
Pure panic.
Right. But instead, you are moving forward without obstruction, tasting something incredibly sweet. It completely shifts the paradigm from panic to joy.
But to understand how this journey is directed, we really have to look at the underlying mechanics of this universe. Which brings us to a major recurring theme in the material.
The hukam.
Yes, the concept of hukam, or divine command, the divine will. And the imagery used to explain it is so grounded and biological.
It really is.
It talks about being conceived, growing in the womb, and then being born headfirst and upside down.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this specific biological reality of being born headfirst and upside down illustrates total vulnerability.
Because you have no say in it.
None. You do not control your conception. You certainly don't direct your development in the womb, and you are pushed into this world in a completely disorienting state.
Upside down.
Literally upside down.
Yeah.
Human birth is profoundly helpless. We start our lives fundamentally out of control, submitting to a process much larger than ourselves. Hukam dictates the entire human condition.
Right, because it says we come and go with our destiny written and preordained. But hold on, let me push back on this for a second.
Go ahead.
If everything from our birth to our eventual departure is completely preordained by this command, if our destiny is already written before we even arrive, doesn't that just strip away our free will entirely?
It sounds like it at first glance.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, why even try to build a boat or seek out this ambrosial nectar if the script is already locked in? It can feel incredibly paralyzing.
That is the ultimate philosophical tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
But within this framework, the hukam isn't meant to be a paralyzing force. It's meant to be a liberating one.
Liberating how?
The exhaustion in the sea of fear comes from the illusion that you are the one generating the waves.
Oh.
The text suggests that realizing you are not the ultimate author of your existence relieves you of the crushing burden of ego. You aren't meant to change the direction of the ocean's current.
You just have to navigate it.
Exactly. To combat the struggles of life, you need the true power of the true Lord. And you access that by accepting the command, not finding it.
But realizing that is much easier said than done. The human ego naturally wants to fight the current.
Which is precisely why the guidance of the guru is framed as an absolute necessity in this text. Without the guru, this divine command simply cannot be understood.
You just keep thrashing in the water.
Right. The human mind, left to its own devices, will just thrash around trying to assert control.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text outlines two wildly different ways people respond to this reality. It clearly outlines two very different paths to navigate this preordained existence.
Yes, the two archetypes.
Right, we have the Menmuk and the Gurmukh. Let's look at the Menmuk first, which essentially means the self-willed person.
The Manmuk relies strictly on their own ego and duality. They completely ignore the divine command, and they wander endlessly in reincarnation.
It feels very relevant to our modern hustle culture, actually. This idea that if you just grind hard enough, you can conquer the ocean through sheer force of will. But the outcome for the Manmuk in the text is described in brutal terms.
Very brutal.
Because they fight the natural flow, they're described as being bound and gagged and driven away, crying out and suffering.
And deceived by their own sins. It is a visceral description of resistance. If you spend your entire life believing you are the ultimate commander of your destiny, clinging to your own ego,
the transition out of this life is going to hurt.
it will feel like a violent abduction. You are bound and gagged because you are being forced to let go of everything you thought you controlled. You are dragged away, crying out.
That is a terrifying image. It's the ultimate consequence of being spiritually heavy. You sink because you refuse to drop your own baggage.
Exactly.
But then we have the complete opposite experience, the path of the Gurmukh, the guru-oriented person.
Instead of facing their own ego, the Gurmukh faces the guru. Through the command, they realize the word of the Shabad.
They actually align themselves with it.
Right. And because they resolve their affairs through the guru, they depart this world in a completely different way.
Yeah. They depart, resolving their affairs. There's a sense of completion. I picture someone neatly packing a suitcase because they know exactly where they are going rather than being dragged out of the house.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Right.
The destination changes entirely for them. The Gurmukh goes to the court of the Lord, robed in honor.
Robed in honor.
Yes, they are blessed with truth. They surrender to the command, and in that surrender, They found their ultimate freedom.
So what does this all mean for us, practically speaking? We have this terrifying sea of fear. We have a boat made of the divine word. We have the reality of Hukam. And we have these two wildly different outcomes.
Right.
How do we actually shift from being that self-willed, exhausted manmuk into someone who departs robed in honor?
The hymn builds to an incredible crescendo to answer exactly that. It shifts from these grand cosmic realities into a deeply intimate internal practice.
The metaphor used for this transformation in the final stanza, verse 8, is easily my favorite part of the whole text. It enthusiastically says, imagine if your body were to become the paper and your mind the ink pot, and if your tongue became the pen.
It is a complete repurposing of the self.
It really is. And with those tools, what does the text say to actually do?
To write and contemplate the glorious praises of the true Lord. The text says the blessed scribe is the one who enshrines this true name within their heart.
So the body isn't just a vessel anymore. It becomes the sacred paper. The mind becomes the ink.
Exactly. The very things that usually cause us so much trouble in that sea of fear are turned into the tools of liberation. But this raises an important question about how we actually do this.
Okay.
Is this just a solitary act? If we look back at verse 2, it explicitly mentions joining the company of good people. And it uses this beautiful imagery of churning the essence to find joy.
Churning the essence. That phrasing struck me too, because earlier we talked about Hukam, this preordained divine will, which sounds like we just need to sit back and let the current take us.
Right.
But churning implies intense, active physical effort. It's kind of a paradox.
It is the great paradox of grace versus effort.
Spiritual fulfillment requires active participation. Think about churning milk to make butter.
Okay.
The butter is inherently in the milk already. You aren't creating it from nothing. But it requires continuous rhythmic effort to extract it, to bring that essence to the surface.
So enshrine the true name requires you to immerse yourself in the right environment and actively do the work. You have to churn the milk even if you didn't invent the butter.
Perfectly said.
It's incredible how cohesive this entire framework is when you step back and look at it. For you listening to this right now, think about the journey this deep dive just took us on.
It's quite a journey.
It really is. It starts by confronting us with the terrifying reality of our daily grind, this vast sea of fear where we are weighed down by our own mistakes and ego.
But it immediately offers a lifeline in the Shabbat.
Right. It forces us to look at the rules of the universe. We don't control the ocean. We don't control arriving upside down, but we get to choose how we sail. And whether you view this through a strictly spiritual lens or a philosophical one, it offers a powerful framework for moving from a state of being self-willed and overwhelmed, the manamuk, to a state of acceptance and grace, the gurmukh.
It demands a serious self-audit, to repurpose the anxiety-inducing parts of ourselves until the truth is permanently enshrined in the heart. Which leaves us with one final, lingering, provocative thought for you to carry with you today.
What's that?
We've looked closely at these profound metaphors, but if Guru Nanak Dev Ji suggests transforming the body into paper and the mind into an ink pot to write the true name, well, what is the story your mind and body are automatically writing right now in your daily habits when you aren't consciously choosing to hold the pen?
That is a question worth contemplating.
We hope this deep dive has given you a moment of clarity and a new perspective to carry forward. Until next time.